What's up, heathens? How ya doing? I'm the Godless engineer, and I critically analyze apologists' claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're going to be looking at a Muslim who thinks that he can stump atheists. Let's see what he's got for us.
And I had a conversation with an atheist once. He was a murtad, actually. He left Islam in college because he took a philosophy class. And after like 6 months or whatever, a semester of philosophy, he thought that Islam doesn't make sense and he has to be an atheist. I put this question to him, like, okay, what is your confidence in science really based on? And he said, well, there are all these scientists. It's like, okay, so you're making an argument to authority.
Something tells me that this probably didn't happen, but let's just assume that it did. Generally speaking, going with the expert consensus on a particular subject is a good basis for your opinion. This consensus should be based on good evidence that definitely supports the conclusion. But I still think that it's imperative to take a look at the evidence and understand how it supports the conclusion. This wasn't a fallacious use of the appeal to authority, though, because he wasn't defending any particular claim against the evidence. He was just explaining why he thought a certain way. Well, if you guys want to find out why this Muslim thinks that he can stump atheists, then please stay tuned.
Do you think is another quick and effective way to show an atheist that their thought process about God and about organized religion is overall incoherent?
Whew! Coming out strong, aren't you, bud? I'd love to hear how people who remain unconvinced of a religion due to the lack of evidence that supports the conclusion that is the one true religion are incoherent. Especially when you have shit like this in the religion. When Joseph said unto his father, "Oh, my father, lo, I saw in a dream 11 planets and the sun and the moon. I saw them prostrating themselves unto me." Quran 12:4. 11 fucking planets? I thought this was the fucking book of truth, but please, tell us how atheists are the ones that are incoherent.
Well, there are many different avenues that you can take. You can take the avenue of intuitions again, because if you're an evolutionist, this is how you can use their arguments against themselves. Fine, you want to accept evolution, you want to accept Darwin and Darwinism. Explain why humans have these kinds of intuitions about the existence of a creator. And even in cultures where there's no religion that can indoctrinate children, like in Japan, the children still have this intuition.
Having an intuition about something does not inherently make it true. I mean, people can have a shitty intuition about stuff. Intuition is subjective and purely speculative. They do, however, help us survive as a social species. That's why we have retained this intuition. But the intuition surrounding the context of God is more of a way to explain the unexplainable. One way to resolve that uncomfortable feeling of not knowing what something is or why something works a certain way is to just make shit up. Like a God that approves of 9-year-olds marrying 40-year-olds. That seems pretty fucking incoherent.
So according to a Darwinist, there must be a reason, there must be a positive adaptation why there's this belief in the creator. So that means that religion has value, and specifically a belief in God and the belief in the creator has an evolutionary value, correct? So then how can you be fighting against religion? How can you be denying religion?
While pulling shit out of your ass may generally work to resolve that uncomfortable feeling of not knowing something, it ultimately results in bad decisions that definitely hold society back. And he would definitely agree that Islam wants to hold society back in favor of a strict adherence to Islam. More on that in another video. Ultimately, the pull it out of your ass method does not actually benefit us in the long run. And it's not the idea of a creator that has evolutionary value. The resolution of not knowing something is what has evolutionary value. And there are better ways to overcome it.
And some atheists will actually acknowledge this. Some of the popular atheists today, they will acknowledge, not like the new atheists like Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens.
I feel like this particular section shows how out of touch he is with the current community of atheists. Nobody knows what it means when you say new atheists. Do you mean that we're not afraid anymore of talking about being non-believers? I really don't see why being outspoken is such a bad thing. Oh yeah, it's a bad thing for you guys. You just want us to shut up and hide. It was a lot easier for you religious folk when we were too afraid to admit we didn't believe in a god. If you mean abrasive assholes, then I would say that that is not representative of the community of atheists on the whole. Still though, I think you'd rather us slink back into our closets rather than deal with the fact that none of us believe your bullshit.
Other atheists will acknowledge, like John Gray, he's like a British atheist. He'll say that, look, religion has a clear advantage or function in society, and we can benefit from the existence of religion. So they will concede that.
Yeah, you do have atheists out there that think that religion is useful to society. Personally, I feel like they turn a blind eye to all the harm that religion does. That's fine if they want to do that, but it doesn't change the fact that religious dogma restricts society and is ultimately bad for society and the human race. But don't get me wrong, I also believe that people should have the option whether or not to believe in a religion. So I'm not the kind of person that thinks that religion should be abolished or forcefully removed. I just hope that people recognize the harm that religion imposes on the individual and society itself.
But the point that you can make against them, against the atheists, is to say that, look, you're saying that this evolution, that our minds and our intuitions are the process of thousands and millions of years of evolution, and the reason that we think the way we do and our psychological structures are that way because they were adaptive. They brought like some benefit in a Darwinian sense to us as organisms. And you have to explain why that is.
Yes, our intuitions can be beneficial, but they're not completely reliable. It does help us survive in the short term because it is meant to protect ourselves from harm or death, but they are definitely not an indication of truth. One of the hallmarks of intuition is the fact that you come to a conclusion devoid of any kind of reasoning. Do you really want your argument for your religion to be that it requires you not to apply reason to it? That's just fucking weird.
But also, all of our intuitions are on that basis. So, for example, scientific intuitions, mathematical intuitions, logical intuitions, these are all intuitions that are a product of evolution, according to the atheist. They're a product of evolution.
What in the fuck are you talking about? Mathematical intuitions? Anytime I've used my intuition on a math problem, it has not turned out well. As far as logical intuition goes, I've often found myself saying, "You're full of shit. I don't know why yet, but I know you are."
So on what basis can you prioritize the intuitions about logic, the intuitions about science and empiricism, the intuitions about math, the intuitions about like certain parts of morality, like the harm principle, like don't harm others, harming others is bad. These are all intuitions, but there's also this intuition about a creator. There's also all of these kinds of intuitions related to or associated with religion. So why are you, the atheist, squashing everything that has to do with religion and saying this is irrelevant or this is bad for human beings?
I still do not know what you mean by fucking mathematical intuition. Like, you mean how we know that 2 + 2 = 4? That kind of shit? Again, intuition is about coming to a conclusion without reasoning your way there. I definitely agree that some people have the intuition that God exists, but that's really only a way to resolve the unknown. That resolution is in no way indicative of reality. People's intuitions about individuals, places, and events are often wrong. Why is this a compelling argument to you? Atheists, for the most part, don't squash everything to do with religion. You're just complaining that your religion doesn't get to control every fucking thing anymore. That's what you're really complaining about. I feel it's quite contradictory to the Quran for you to say that people have the intuition not to harm others. For instance, this quote from the Quran: "Warfare is ordained for you, though it is hateful unto you, but it may happen that ye hate a thing which is good for you, and it may happen that ye love a thing which is bad for you. Allah knoweth ye not." Quran 2:216. That's some grade A intuition not to hurt others right there. Hey y'all, there's this intuition not to harm others, yet also go and fuck them motherfuckers up, okay?
Or this is like, it might not be bad for human beings, but it's kind of not as important as logic and science and reason. Who is deciding that? Who decides which of these intuitions are priority, higher than or lesser than?
Well, generally, society does this. That would also include religious individuals wanting to respect the rights of others. Science, reason, and logic are not really found in religion, yet they possess a far greater ability to help us survive. Those things do exist in religion as long as you don't mind redefining all three of them with bullshit.
On the atheistic worldview, you can't really make that decision on purely the basis of naturalism, because they're all natural. They're all things that, these are all intuitions.
Wait, why can't we make that decision? It's all relative, and it's controlled by the society that you live in. There are, in fact, societies now that put religion above everything else and allow religion to control everything. Those are called theocracies. Just because I don't have some imaginary asshole to dictate to me what I need to place first in my life or society doesn't mean that I can't make those decisions for myself.
And I had a conversation with an atheist once. He was a murtad, actually. He left Islam in college because he took a philosophy class. And after like 6 months or whatever, a semester of philosophy, he thought that Islam doesn't make sense and he has to be an atheist. I put this question to him, like, okay, what is your confidence in science really based on? And he said, well, there are all these scientists. It's like, okay, so you're making an argument to authority that these scientists exist and they're doing work and they're the majority, so therefore what they're saying is true, or they have like the final say on these matters of human origins, right and wrong, and so forth. That's just an argument from authority.
First, I doubt that this ever actually happened, but then again, I doubt any kind of anecdotal evidence that's presented in these cases. It is generally a good idea to accept expert opinions on a particular subject. It is a good way to incorporate new information into your worldview. But I also think that everybody should take a look at the evidence that supports that expert as well. And as I said in the intro, I don't think that this guy, the roommate, was defending any certain claim against any particular piece of evidence. So an appeal to the experts really isn't fallacious in this situation. Regardless, though, our confidence comes from the evidence that they present to support their conclusions, and whether or not that conclusion is logically supported by the evidence. I would say that a scientist that's an expert in the field of human origins is far better equipped to investigate human origins than just somebody with a religious book. The religious book is not going to tell us the actual origin of humanity, despite what you may think. The only way that we can know about human origins is through scientific investigation.
And then he realized the contradiction of that, and he said, well, I don't know. I just don't know. It just, like, science makes sense. Okay, you're saying that science makes sense. Where do you get the faculty to understand as a human being what makes sense or doesn't make sense?
I'm not exactly sure what the question is here. Are you implying that a law is the only thing that can provide people with the ability to make sense of shit? That is just an ad hoc explanation with no evidence to support it. Our brains evolved to make sense of our world, so we just naturally developed this ability to make sense of shit. There is literally no need for a god in this situation. This reinforces my idea that all religious explanations to things ultimately resolve to God did it. That's not an explanation for anything.
So they can't answer these kinds of questions, these deeper kinds of questions, because ultimately it all goes back to, like, even logic, certain logical concepts like principle of non-contradiction, right? The most basic logical principle is ultimately going back to a human intuition. And if you're a Darwinist, that means it's something that's involved. It means that it's something that has is in you as a human being because it's adaptive. It like benefits you in your reproduction somehow.
Yeah, but we can answer these questions. Just because you don't like the answers doesn't mean that we can't answer them. Also, people can hold contradictory ideas about things. In fact, it's called cognitive dissonance. It's that uncomfortable feeling you get when you're holding contradictory beliefs. You can ultimately resolve this in many ways. But you can hold contradictory beliefs. It's also not human intuition that gave us the principle of non-contradiction, because we actually reasoned our way to that. And no, human intuition doesn't help with reproduction. That shows how little you know about evolution or natural selection. He may be confusing instinct with intuition here, as far as mating goes within a species, but for this particular context, he's talking about intuition helping us procreate and survive. But ultimately, as it pertains to evolution and natural selection, human intuition would allow us to survive in our environment and thus propagate the species. The law or principle of non-contradiction does not help you to produce children.
And they provide a story for that, like an evolutionary story for that. Well, okay, fine, but there are many other intuitions other than the principle of non-contradiction or whatever else, or science or math or logic-based intuitions. There's also intuitions about God. There are intuitions about creator. So on your own definitions, based on your own understanding of evolution, you won't be able to, you have to explain why those kinds of intuitions have to be discarded.
Probably because the explanation of God did it doesn't actually explain anything at all. It should be discarded because it doesn't give us any kind of answer. It doesn't explain anything. Anything that can be explained with God did it can be more accurately described with a natural explanation. When we have better explanations for things in this reality, then we should discard those non-explanations. Hey, here's an example from the Quran. And verily, we have beautified the world's heavens with lamps, and we have made them missiles for the devils, and for them we have prepared the doom of flame. Quran 67:5. We should totally discard this horrible explanation of stars and why they are here. Because stars are not missiles in the sky that are used to destroy devils.
Obviously, as Muslims, we know that we don't accept the evolutionary explanation. But since they base everything on evolution, their entire conception of human origins and the universe as a whole, then we can use their own arguments against them.
You not accepting evolution is more of a fundamentalist thing, not really a Muslim thing. And evolution has no bearing on the origins of the universe. I have also yet to see how you can turn our arguments around on us. Unless you mean all that shit that you pulled out of your ass earlier, because that literally makes no sense in the current context. If so, then you really haven't turned around our arguments on us.
As Muslims, we know that Allah has given us a fitrah. Allah has given us a sense of that He is the creator, that He should be worshipped, that He is the provider of all good. And everything that we enjoy in this life is coming from Allah, and for that reason, many other reasons, we worship Allah. Those are intuitions that Allah has given us, just like other intuitions. But how does the evolutionist explain it?
This is really confusing here because he started off by talking about this ambiguous God existing, and then he turns it around into the very specific God that Islam has created. Of course, to him, there is only one God, and just like with the Christians, this God has made it painfully obvious to all of us that He exists. Everything that Daniel has said in this video is an ad hoc statement with no evidence to support it. As Hitchens once said, what can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. There is no evidence that Allah exists, let alone the only God that exists. The Quran, just like the Bible, is filled with historical and scientific inaccuracies. That is why I feel they are both detrimental to human civilization. Anything that doesn't comport with reality will ultimately cause harm. Also in this video, Daniel has speculated that scientifically minded people cannot explain intuition, when in fact we can explain intuition, and we can explain how that's helped us along our evolutionary path. We can make quick decisions that optimize our survivability in an environment. Saying that we can't explain intuition is just flat out wrong. Thank you, heathens, for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, go down below. Let me know in the comments. What did you think about Daniel's video? Are you convinced by his argument? Or do you think that it was kind of piss poor like I did? Let me know down below. While you're down there, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this in your feed. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens!